Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll get started with our last class for this particular course, which is the design of output stages. Now, we have looked at the op-amp design in detail. We have looked at different types of op-amps. And of course, those are not the only type. There are a lot of derivatives of whatever we have seen. But the fundamental structures of most of the common topologies we have already seen and we have covered. We've looked at the different trade-offs that are there between the different topologies and so on. Now, in this class, we will look at the what is called as the output stages. Now, in one of the earlier classes, or rather when I started off with the discussion on op-amps, I said that an op-amp typically is that you first have an operational transconductance OTA, which can drive capacitive loads, right? And if you want to make it a full-fledged op-amp, you need to add an output stage. And then this output stage will help you to drive resistive loads. Now, in many cases, for example, a very good example is the band gap references or the PTAT references, the reference generation that we saw in the last few classes, where the op-amp is actually driving only the gates of some transistors, right? So in many applications, you will have the op-amp driving only a capacitive load, right? Basically, just driving the gates of transistors and so on. So in all those cases, just an OTA is sufficient, and I mean that is good enough. But there are a few cases where you need to drive resistive loads, especially if you are going to interface with the outside world, or if you're going to, let us have a kind of a structure like this. For example, if you're going to use the op-amp and let us say this is given to some common mode voltage, you are having some active filter, let us say. So you have some R1, R2, and this is some input voltage. This is the capacitor. So basically, this is a first order active RC filter. It's a first order filter. Now, in this case, what is happening is that this op amp has to drive the resistive loads. So if you have, let us say, a half a volt swing and you have a 1 kilo ohm resistor, the amount of current that you need to drive is roughly around 0.5 milliamp of current needs to be driven, right? So a typical, if you're going to bias your OTA itself in the order of some 100 200 microamp of current, then where will you get the current for? 0.5 milliamperes or something like that. Okay. So in those situations, so typically what happens is whenever you are driving purely capacitive loads, you don't put an output stage. When you are going to drive resistive loads, then you put an output stage. Now, one of the most commonly, I mean, a more rudimentary output stage is basically a class A output stage, which is nothing but the source follower that we have seen. Now, what is a source follower? So if you take an NMOS input, let's say this is given to VDD, and you have a current source. Basically, let's say you have some reference current coming in, and then you bias it up. Let's say this is your V in, this is your V out. Okay. Let's say this is M1, M2, this is M0. This is some reference current. So basically, what do you do here? It is that you bias this source follower with a larger amount of current, and then we have already seen source followers, right? We've already analyzed their small signal behavior and so on. The output voltage is basically going to lag behind the input voltage by the gate to source voltage that is required for this transistor to be on. Okay. So for example, if you want to be able to supply up to 1 milliamp of current, so you will bias this transistor such that like this is 1 milliamp of current. All right. So it means that when you go to the negative side, let's say, I mean, of course, this will also have a capacitive load. I mean, so basically this can sink up to 1 milliamp of current. Now, so when will it be able to sink? It will be able to sink when you are able, I mean, when Vin is low. So if your Vin is low and then this is also low, it will be able to sink that amount of current. When it is going high, what will happen is that Vin anyway goes up and therefore the VGS also increases. This will be taking a constant current and then you'll be pumping the extra current into the load resistor. Okay. So you will basically design it in such a way that you are able to drive the required amount of current. Now this is a class A operation because the transistor M1 always keeps conducting current, or rather you have a constant current bias of, let us say, M2, and especially if you are going to use bipolar supply voltages, right? So let us say this is going to be connected to some minus VSS, right? Then what will happen is for negative voltage peaks, this M2 is going to source or sink the required amount of current, producing a negative voltage. For the positive cycle, of course, it will still be taking that amount of current, but then the transistor M1 will produce that extra amount of current. So this is the way that you would design a source follower. Now, needless to say that as you try to do it for higher currents, if you are trying to pump larger amounts of current, the efficiency is pretty bad. Now, all of us have studied Class A, Class B, Class AB power amplifiers in the context of in your analog electronic circuits course in your third semester. So we all know that a Class A amplifier is a very low efficiency one. So if you just want to drive a small amount of load, that is like a fairly large resistive loads, you just need to be able to drive it. And you really don't want to drive, let us say, milliamps kind of load, just maybe about 1 milliamp or lesser than that. What you would do is just you put a common drain stage and then you finish the job. All right. Now, if you want to drive larger amounts of currents, let's say you want to have currents which can go in the order of a few milliamps or sometimes even tens of milliamps and so on, then this becomes a very poor option. So there we use what is called as different class AB or a class B push-pull output stages. Okay. Now, I'm sure all of you would have studied the Class B, Class AB power amplifier in the context of analog circuits, discrete analog circuits with BJTs and so on. But in MOSFETs, it is slightly different. Okay. So a very crude and a rudimentary way of doing things would be like to take I will give you probably let us say some 2 or 3 different structures, all right, and then we will be able to see how it is working. All right. Now, so let us say a class AB structure or a class B structure for now is like if you take. So this is one way of doing things. All right. Say this is VDD, this is ground. Now, what you're doing is that you're connecting the load impedance here. Now, how is this basically going to work? Now, let us say if I connect these two together, now what will happen? As my input voltage increases, now first of all, what is this kind of a circuit? This transistor M1 and transistor M2, both of them are connected as a common, yeah. It is not an inverter. It is not an inverter because it is kind of like you jumbled up the order in an inverter, right? You usually have a PMOS here and the NMOS here. here you've kind of swapped the two transistors. So M1 with RL acts kind of like a source follower, and M2 with RL also acts as a source follower. Okay. So M1 with RL acts as a source follower, and M2 with RL acts as a source follower. Now, if you directly connect like how I have done, what will happen is that there will be a large amount of DC current which is flowing through this entire thing, almost like a equivalent of your crowbar current flowing through your inverter, right? Because both the transistors are on, and there is a lot of wasteful current which is flowing like this. So in order to prevent this, what we need to do, we need to somehow find a way to add some kind of a voltage, right? Some kind of a V bias 1, and also some bias voltage here. Let's call it V bias 2. All right. Such that the voltage here is higher and the voltage here is lower. So this will become V in plus VB1, and this becomes V in minus VB2, right? So now what will happen is that, of course, the polarity can be adjusted in the sense that both M1 and you can choose the values of VB1 and VB2 in such a way that M1 and M2 are at the verge of turning on. Okay. Now, how to realize that we will see. How to get that to work. But if you can make these VB1 and VB2 in such a way such that M1 is at the verge of turning on and M2 is also at the verge of turning on. Of course, by adjusting VB1 and VB2, then basically you can either get a class B operation or you can get a class AB operation. So if you put them literally kind of when they're kind of off, then what happens is you have a class B operation. Now, if you bias them in such a way that M1 and M2 draw a tiny amount of current, and then of course, as the voltage increases, then, the current increases, then basically, then what you would get is a class AB amplifier. Now, if you look at the transistor M1, now, if you put this literally when Vn equal to 0, that is when Vn equal to 0, if M1 and M2 are at the verge of turning on, like if the input increases a little bit, then what will happen? M1 starts conducting more, right? At the same time, M2 goes into turn off. So in the as Vin increases, okay, we know that anyway Vin will have a certain common mode voltage. So as Vin increases, M1 conducts heavily and M2 goes into cutoff, right? So basically all the current now, instead of flowing as a crowbar current here, now all the current from M1 is going to flow into RL and M2 is shut off, right? Now similarly, what happens when you have, it's a little easier to understand if you have bipolar supplies plus VDD and minus VSS. So if you say this is, let's say, minus VSS or something, then a similar kind of thing is applicable for this one also. So as Vin decreases, now what happens is M2 conducts heavily because M2 is a PMOS transistor. The source is at a higher potential than the gate. And M1 obviously goes into cutoff. All right. So now our task is basically how to generate this VB1 and VB2. All right. So let us see how we can generate it. Yeah. So,
sir, can you explain what is the need of putting this VB1 and VB2?
okay. So if you don't put VB1 and VB2, all right. So VB1 and VB2 will be kind of, in such a way that they will subtract the voltage. Okay. So assume that VB1 and VB2 are negative. All right. So if you don't do that, what will happen? So let us say, for easier understanding, let us just say this is some plus 0.9 volt and this is minus 0.9 volt. I mean, overall you have 1.8 volt. Let us say you're having 0 volt here. Now what will happen? Basically, this is, and let us say you connect your RL, right? So, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I think VB1 and VB2 will be positive. Okay, so by the amount by which you would make them positive is basically dependent on the whether you're putting it as a class B or a class AB. Because if you take this particular configuration, that is when you have a plus and minus supply voltage, right? This is also, let's say, 0 volt. This is also 0 volt. Then both the transistors are off. Okay, so till it reaches the threshold voltage, right, you are going to have this crossover distortion, right? So you're going to have like a pretty bad crossover distortion because the threshold voltage in the case of a 180 nanometer technology might be around what, around 0.4, 0.45 or something. So that plus or minus 0.45, you will not have any conduction. Okay. So if you put some bias voltage here, then you make sure that it is just barely on at the verge of turning on, right? And so that you kind of, try to eliminate this crossover distortion. Okay. The amount of bias that you give will basically dictate whether you are in class B or in class AB mode or in class C mode. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, yeah. So now, how to generate these biases? So of course, we cannot put a voltage source there directly. So let us try to do it. So I am explaining this with a bipolar supply. Now the similar concept, of course, this particular circuit people do not use at lower supply voltages. I'll give you another circuit, but basically you can try to use similar thing for a unipolar supply also. Okay. Now, this is our, sorry. Let us say this is minus VSS. Let's say this is RL. Okay. Now, we have our VN. Okay. So, VN is coming in. Let's say this is M1, this is M2. Let's say this is M3. So now what we are going to do is basically to put, this is a PMOS transistor. And therefore, we put a PMOS current mirror like this. Okay, and then we put another NMOS current mirror. Maybe I'll just take it up. All right, so this is also, let's say, minus VSS. So this is how it basically works. Let's say this is M4, M5, and M6. So now what do you basically get here? So if you have a transistor, if you have a circuit like this is going to be your input, right? So there is a, oh, I forgot this one. Yeah. So there is there is a constant current that is flowing through this one, right? So this is the current source, but then your input is coming at the bottom, right? So this input, I mean, this Vin is going to generate some amount of current, right? And that is going to get mirrored to M2. And if you see what is going to be the, and similarly, M5 is going to mirror the current to M1. And therefore, if you see this particular transistor, I mean, if you look at the output, the Vout min that it can take is basically what? You have VDD, or rather, the Vout max. What is the Vout max that you would have? So you will have VDD minus the overdrive voltage or VD sat of 6 minus the gate to source voltage of 1. So that is the maximum voltage to which this output stage can go, because this M1 transistor has to be in saturation, and then of course M6 has to be in saturation. So this M6 is basically there to just provide some current here, but the I mean, it's just to basically bias this entire thing. So what will happen is that as Vin increases and increases the, increases the current flow here. Now what will happen is this, your M4 transistor will basically, the gate will start falling down, right? And in order to support that amount of current, and then basically you're kind of shifting it by some amount of, let's say, you're pushing it up by VDS, and then it will basically mirror on both sides. But the problem here is that you have like 4 transistors stacked up, and then Vout max itself is what? VDD minus 1 overdrive voltage minus 1 gate to source voltage. Okay. So the problem in this thing is that, and similarly, you can also look at your Vout min, right? Your Vout min will be like minus VSS minus VD sat of, let us say, M3 and minus the VSG of M2. So you have very less swing limit at the output, right? So the swing that is coming at the output is quite limited. All right. So if you are at, let us say, plus or minus 5 volt, that kind of a technology node, this circuit will fairly, work quite well. But then if you bring it to 1.8 volt, or let us say even 1.2 volt or 1 volt supply, you're going to lose a significant amount of voltage. Basically, you might have some maybe 100, 200 millivolts swing for this particular circuit. Okay. So this circuit cannot work at lower transistor. Basically, it cannot work at lower supply voltages. So in order to work at lower supply voltages, we use a push-pull common source amplifier. And one more thing that you can notice here in this particular circuit is that this definitely cannot give you rail-to-rail output, right? It is quite far from the supply rails, right? And therefore, which is why this is typically not used. This particular circuit was popular when you had, the older technology nodes, but once you come to submicron technology nodes, this is really not useful. But we kind of got the idea, and we understand that if you're using a common drain configuration or a source follower configuration, the problem is that your output swing is limited. Now, in order to improve your output swing, what we do is we use a common source amplifier. Now, why do we use a common source amplifier? So what is your common source? So you have the NMOS at the top, PMOS at the top, and NMOS at the bottom, right? So now, again, let us just understand it with a bipolar supply, and the similar thing will be used even in the case of, only thing is it will just get scaled up by some common mode voltage for a unipolar supply. Okay. Now, if you take the case of an inverter, okay, this is an inverter, M1 and M2, and if you give a resistive load, now we know very well, because you have a PMOS at the top, it can take your output all the way to VDD and no problems. Same way, since you are having an NMOS at the bottom, it can take it all the way to ground or minus VSS or whatever, right? So what basically we need is that, so maybe what I will do is, instead of explaining with minus VSS, let me explain this with ground, okay? Although some of the textbooks will still give, explain with minus VSS, let me attempt it with ground here, okay? Because that will be most likely the case, because typically you don't use negative supply voltages in many of the CMOS based ICs. Okay. Now in this case, your M2 can give you a clean ground, your M1 can give you a clean VDD, which means that this kind of a topology can give you rail to rail output swing. All right. Now, if I'm going to short it like how I have given here, I am going to end up with a lot of crowbar current, right? Because now, let us say V in is going to be some common mode voltage plus, let's say, VAC. Now this common mode voltage will put both M1 and M2 in the conduction mode, and both will be in saturation, and they will draw a huge amount of crowbar current here, right? So that's a very bad thing to do. So what we need to do is basically we need to be able to bias it up with some kind of a voltage source, right? So maybe what we will need to do here is basically to increase the voltage here, and we need to reduce the voltage here such that M1 and M2 are basically at the verge of turning on for Vin equal to 0, correct? So if let's say this is some VB1 and VB2, so sorry, in the previous example, I think I got it wrong. So this VB1 and VB2 is basically to reduce the excessive crossover distortion, and that is why you put it. But whereas the explanation that I gave earlier, which is true for this one, is basically that in order to avoid the crowbar current, you kind of bias these two transistors such that they are at the edge of this one. Now, what will happen when the input increases from your given common mode voltage? As the input increases from your common mode voltage, obviously M2 goes into conduction mode, and therefore you will basically M2 will conduct and it will reduce your output voltage, right? And when you have the lower half cycle, what will happen? M2 will go into cutoff, and M1 will start conducting, and M1 will start pumping current into RL. So obviously the output will also have a Vout common mode plus some VAC. Okay. So of course, when input is 0, there is a small amount of current going, flowing through M1 and M2, and also into your RL, because that is in the case of a unipolar supply. In the case of a bipolar supply, of course, you will not have any current which is coming in. All right. Okay. So now how to generate these voltages? So there is a very interesting way to generate this voltage. So let me give you that particular circuit. Okay. So let us say this is your VDD. So this
Sir,
is going to, yeah.
sir, can you go back to the previous slide once?
Yeah.
Sir, that VB1 should it be negative, sir? Like whenever we have some V in, it will always turn on the M1 because it will always be less.
Right. VB1, sorry, VB1 will be in this direction, right? So yeah, you need a higher gate voltage, basically. You're right. Yeah. So they say basically here you will have V in plus VB1. So higher the gate voltage, you kind of, turn it off. And here this will be V in minus VB2. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for pointing it out. Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, what is the difference between this and previous architecture?
Yeah, in the previous one, see, you have an NMOS at the top and PMOS at the bottom. Okay. And therefore, you cannot have a clean VDD and you cannot go down to VSS, which is why I gave you the V max or V out max. What is the value? V out min, what is the value? All right. Whereas in this architecture, we are putting the PMOS at the top and NMOS at the bottom, which means you can go all the way till the supply rails. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Got it. So, I mean, it might look very similar, but basically what you have is like you have PMOS and NMOS interchange between the two versions. Okay. So this is kind of like the common source one, and therefore you have polarity inversion which is happening. So that also you need to keep in mind. Okay. So, but sometimes you can take care of it by using the previous driver circuitry. Okay. So what happens is your input. Let me just give you this one. Let's say this is some VB1, and then since this is an NMOS, it goes here. Similarly, what happens is that we connect this to a PMOS transistor. Okay. This is to VDD. Okay. V in, let's number. So M1, M2, M3, M4, M5, M6, M7, and M8. All right. So you have some capacitor and you have some resistor. Okay. Right. Now what happens? How does this basically work? So let us look at the top side section here. So if you have an V in, okay, and it is connected to this NMOS, which is M1 transistor. And if you look at the source of this M1 transistor, it is connected to the source of this another PMOS transistor, which is biased with this voltage of V1. So which basically means what? This transistor, I mean V in, by the time it reaches here is basically it's VGS1 and it shares VGS4. Correct? So if you fix this gate voltage of VB1 and let us say you have your V in, now let us say equal to only the common mode voltage, you do not have the AC voltage. Now what will happen? Between VCM and VB1, you have two gate to source voltages. All right. And these two gate to source voltages are going to align in such a way that they are going to generate some amount of current. So if for a given input common mode voltage, if you change your VB1, you can change the operation of this M8 transistor, right? So if you increase your VB1, you are going to reduce the amount of quiescent current flowing through M8 transistor. Is that clear? Because VCM minus VB1 is equal to actually VGS1 plus VSG4. And these two transistors are going to control the amount of current which is going to flow through ID7, which is going to control the current which is going to flow through ID8. Right. So if you increase VB1, you have lesser gate to source voltage for both the transistors. And I mean, depending on the NMOS width and the PMOS width and their relative mu and mu P and so on, it will decide, I mean, certain amount of current will flow through them. And that is the amount of current that is going to get mirrored to M8. So by changing VB1, you can change the quiescent current through M8. Now, similarly, the same story works for the drive of M6. You have between VCM or rather VB2 minus VCM, you are going to have what? VGS3 and VSG2. So if you reduce VB2, what will happen? You are going to reduce the amount of current. So this is going to control the current flowing through ID5, which is going to control the current which is going to flow through ID, which is going to flow through transistor 6. So depending on whether you want to put it in the class B mode or in the class AB mode, and if it is the class AB mode, what is the quiescent current in which you want to put, all that can be decided by choosing the voltages of VB1 and VB2 in relation to the expected input common mode voltage. Now, in addition, when you have, let us say, about this common mode voltage, let us say you are having, of course, when you have a unipolar supply, you need to, when you want to have a certain amount of V out common mode, you need to be able to supply some amount of current here. Okay, so you will bias it up in such a way. Of course, if you have a bipolar supply, then when input is equal to 0, you don't need to have any current flow through the load. But in the case of a unipolar supply, because in order to maintain the V out common mode, some amount of current has to flow through RL, right? So that you will design your VB1 and VB2 in such a way that M8 is probably not on, but M6 is on, providing a certain amount of current. Now, when the input voltage increases above the common mode voltage, what will happen? The current through M1 will increase. Okay, so as V in increases beyond VCM, ID1 increases which basically means that, I mean, this gate is raised up, which means that Vin to VB1, you have to accommodate both the gate to source voltages, which means that ID1 increases, ID4 increases, and thereby ID, 7 increases, and as a result, ID increases. Correct? So which means that now as you increase your input voltage, there is more current flowing through this transistor 1, 4, and 7, which gets mirrored to M8, and therefore M8 is going to go into larger conduction. And at the same time, what will happen to the other side, the PMOS side? So as the input voltage increases, the gate voltage is now increasing, but the VB2 is now constant, and therefore that is going to crunch your ID2. So ID2 reduces, which basically results in obviously ID4 also in decreasing, right? Which will result in ID5 and ID6 reducing, right? So which means that the PMOS is kind of going more towards the shut off or cut off, and your NMOS is conducting. So which means that you're not unnecessarily burning current. Basically, you're just allowing M8 to do the job, and M6 current reduces, M8 current increases, which means that this current is reducing, this current is increasing. This current is increasing, which means the current will basically flow from the load side. Now, in the negative half cycle, basically the inverse happens, and M8 reduces, the current through M8 reduces, and the current through M6 increases, and your output voltage goes. Now, by appropriately choosing VB1 and VB2, you can either put this in, let me just say, and vice versa. By choosing VB1,
Hello, sir.
Hello.
are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about now? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I had some interruptions. Sorry about that. Okay. Anyway, So what I was mentioned.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, in the second line, it's ID3, I guess, instead of ID4.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Thank you. This is, yeah, M2, ID3, 5 and 6. Okay. Yeah, thanks. So by choosing VB1 and VB2 in relation to VCM, you can either put it in the class B mode or you can put it in the class AB mode. Okay. So this is a way by which you can control your, so the advantage of this one is that basically this can give you rail to rail output signals as well. All right. Now, yeah.
Sir, as compared to the previous circuit where we had like some VB1, VB2 given as a voltage kind of voltage source. No, this
Right.
one. No, not this one, sir, the other one. That no, first PMOS, then NMOS, then we had yes, this one, sir. Sir,
Okay.
what is the advantage of the other, like this next circuit with respect to this one, sir?
Basically, how do you put this VB1 and VB2? You can, putting a voltage source in series is literally not practical, no?
Okay, sir.
You cannot, basically, it is impossible to put a series voltage source. This is basically for us to understand. This is the functionality that is required. How is the functionality achieved? It is achieved by this.
Okay, sir.
You basically need some Vin plus some bias voltage. Now this VB, okay, in order to make sure that this is not confusing, let me call this as VG2 and let us say VG1. So in that case, this will be VG1. Where is this? Yeah, let me call it as VG2. Okay, so this VB1 and VB2 are not the same as this VB1, VG1 and VG2. Okay. At the end of the day, what you get here is Vin minus VB1 or Vin plus VB1. And here what you are getting is some Vin minus VB2. Basically, this is the functionality, and the functionality is achieved by this kind of a circuit. All right. So you kind of control the current, and then from the current you generate a voltage. So that's how it is done. Okay. Now in this case, what do we have? We have a single-ended voltage coming in and a single-ended voltage at the output. Now for a differential circuit, of course, you can use the same thing, but there is another more easier way to do it as well. Now, how is it done? So let us say you have, let's say, a differential class AB circuit. Now, what you would do is basically like it is understood that if you put a NMOS at the top and make it act as a source follower, you end up with headroom issues, and therefore we stick to the PMOS at the top and the NMOS at the bottom. Now, basically, let us say you have Vout P and Vout M. Okay. Now, what will happen is that let us say you have your fully differential op amp. Okay. Let's say this is your fully differential OTA with, let us say, Vout P and Vout M. All right. Now, because there is an inversion here, you take that Vout M. So let us say you want to have the Vout P bar dash, which means that this is the output buffered version of the positive thing. Let us say your OTA has V in P. Sorry, minus plus plus minus. Okay, so this is your OTA, and now you want to generate your, have your class AB output stage. Now, how you do it is basically, now if you want your Vout P, the plus terminal of your op amp at the output, because there is an inversion here, you connect your Vout M here. All right, and then you take the Vout P and you give it to another NMOS, and then you connect it to another PMOS, just direct connected like this. So let us put some numbers. Let's say this is M1, M2, this is M3 and M4. Now, this is your elegant, way to drive it. The similar way, we will do it for, let us say, for Vout P, Vout M as well. So let us say this is, let's say this is Vout M dash, which is basically the buffered version of Vout M. So since there is an inversion, you put Vout P here, and then you connect this. This is your Vout M. So now what will happen? So if, let us just look at the plus terminal part of the things, right? So how does this, how will Vout P and Vout M look? So let us say if this is your Vout common mode, your let us say your Vout P is like this, and your and your Vout M is going to be like this. Okay, just assume, I mean, my drawing is not so great, but then you kind of get the idea, right? So this color is Vout P, and this color is Vout M. Now, what happens when Vout P is greater? So in the positive half cycle, let us say this is increasing, right? And this is basically like this. So when Vout P increases, correspondingly Vout M is decreasing, which means what will happen to M2? M2 ID2, basically ID2 will also now start going down like this, right? Whereas what will happen to M3 here? M3 ID3 will also follow Vout P, because voltage and current basically track each other. Now, as the current increases here, what will happen to this transistor, the gate voltage of this transistor? This gate voltage will basically go down, right? Because as current increases, the gate of the PMOS will have to go down to accommodate that current. And as current decreases, the gate will go up, right? So this particular node is going to be like this. And therefore, if you look at ID1, ID1 is also going to have what? This kind of behavior. Okay. So basically, what is the current actually flowing through RL? It is the difference between the two currents, ID1 and ID2, which is basically going to be having the same polarity as your Vout P. Okay. Is this clear? The same logic will apply for the Vout M dash as well. Okay. So as this, so basically what will happen is that you will, I mean, I just kind of chopped the circuits and put it. In fact, what will happen is like your OTA is there, and your, if I were to draw the full, this thing, let's say if I take a simple 5 transistor OTA, so this is Vin plus, Vin minus. Let's say you have your current source, and then this is your Vout P, this is your Vout M, and then this circuit will basically come on one side, and the other circuit will come on the other side, and you will basically have the total. Basically, this here you can talk about, like, let's say you want to have the plus terminal here, you will have Vout M, and you'll have Vout P connected, something like basically this. This is your Vout P dash. Okay. And similarly, on this side, what you will have is basically that you will have the same this thing. So you'll have Vout M, and this will get mirrored. This will be Vout P. So this will become your Vout M dash. Okay. So this is how your fully differential class AB circuit works. So now, because you have the differential signal, it becomes quite easy for us to design. And of course, by taking the relative dimensions of the transistors, like you can choose the dimension of this transistor such that it is, making sure that, the current which is flowing through the output, you can put it in class B mode or class AB mode and so on. Okay. Another thing that you must keep in mind is that now this becomes a two-stage OTA. Okay, so this is your first stage. In the case of your, I'll conclude with this. Now, in the case of your this particular type of a thing where you have a source follower based thing, the gain of a source follower is basically slightly less than 1, right? And therefore, it's really not going to contribute to a high gain, and your output impedance is also less. But whereas in this case, when you're using a common source type of a topology, where, kind of almost like an inverter topology, either be it this case or be it the fully differential one that I showed you. Now, this second stage will also provide some gain because it is kind of like a common source, right? Only thing is, it is an active common source basically, right? And therefore, this will also provide gain, and you need to make sure that you are doing compensation. So typically what will happen is that you will have this is V out P and this thing. So basically you will have a Miller compensation going from here to V out M and from here to V out P. Basically you'll do Miller compensation to make sure that this whole thing is stable, because this class AB buffer stage, instead of just giving you a gain of less than 1, in this particular type of thing, it will give you gain as well, gain of which is much greater than 1, and therefore you need to, this will also act as your second stage while providing you with the current drive that is required for your resistive, for driving your resistive load. All right. So these are circuits which are quite commonly used in the industry as well. So any doubts, any questions?
Sir, can't we go for PMOS based second stage?
You're having, yeah, you can do that. Depending, you can do that as well. Depending
because the
on what
common
is
mode would be higher for V out P and V out M that side.
Correct. You can do that. You can do that as well.
Okay, sir.
You can do that as well, but anyway, all these things you will control using the device sizes. So basically, if you control this device size, right, this and this device sizing will control the amount of current that is going to flow when your input is zero, differential input is 0. Right? So you can do that as well. The whole thing can be kind of inverted with a PMOS input, so on. Possible.
Sir, can this circuit be used to generate a output rail to rail also?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir.
So the advantage here is that the V out P and V out M need not be rail to rail, right? Because there is gain in your second stage. So this is your second stage, right? So there is gain here. So V out P, V out M need not be rail to rail, but whereas your second stage can give you rail to rail output. Because you can dial this NMOS transistor all the way down, and you can, source the current such that it goes, even if this final transistor is not in saturation, it's really not an issue. Right? It can provide you with rail to rail.
What is the trade-off here?
Trade-off here is that, efficiency will be little. This is a different topology. Okay, maybe one of the things can be that the output impedance is now, varying. So as long as these two are in saturation, then your output impedance is quite high. So that is one problem that you have here. Whereas that problem is not there in this particular thing because your output impedance is low. It's 1 over GM. Whereas in this case, your output impedance is high. But still you can kind of use this for many applications. Anyway, you'll put it in feedback, so the feedback will help you in some way.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, just a general doubt, like what type of circuit we use when we have to drive very large current, like speakers and stuff like that.
Okay, so when you're talking about driving speakers and so on, you cannot drive it out of a CMOS IC, right? Or it will have to be a older technology CMOS transistor. Okay, so if you cannot take a 180 nanometer, a technology node or this thing and try to drive some large speaker. Maybe headphones, yes. Okay, because headphones anyway will take much smaller amount of power, and therefore headphones, earphones, and all can be driven. But when you talk about larger thing, you go for discrete electronic devices, right? You use these power BJTs or power MOSFETs, and then you have a discrete design. You can have a class B or a class AB power amplifier design, and that's how they do it. Or nowadays, a lot of these audio power amplifiers are moving to PWM based class D power amplifier, right? So you use some delta sigma techniques to generate pulse width modulated signals, and you feed that into your switching circuits. Like you use a switching MOSFETs, power MOSFETs, and then you have these. You have an output filter which will remove all the harmonics, and you'll basically get a audio output with lesser, higher efficiency. So those bigger amplifiers that you see for driving audio amplifiers, those are all discrete electronic devices. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Hello, sir.
So there you'll use power MOSFETs or power BJTs. Yeah. Someone else had a question?
Yes, sir. So,
Yeah.
just for BJT transistor, how to use in lattice spice, like in CMOS technology?
Yeah. So for the purpose of the project, because it's just a course project, I'm okay with you guys taking a typical, maybe that 2N2222 transistor, or you can take a PNP transistor and you can use for your course project. Okay. But in practice, what happens is every CMOS technology also has some, maybe a few varieties of BJTs. Okay. So they are probably not the best BJTs that you can get out of silicon, but like how I explained in yesterday's class, you can form a PNP transistor. There are a lot of constraints though. So the PNP transistor, the collector has to be grounded. So that is one constraint that you have. So those are the constraints that you would have in a CMOS technology. Okay. In yesterday's lecture, I discussed about how you can form a PNP transistor inside a CMOS process. Okay, but for the purpose of your project, you can just use a normal transistor to, generate whatever you need to.
Sir, that like you said that you would upload a BJT file. So
Yeah. Let me try to do it today. So there are some BJT models also in 65 nanometer. I don't know if they are there in the 180 nanometer thing, but the 65 nanometer BJT models, I was trying to locate it on my laptop. Somehow I couldn't. So, but I'll try to do that and I'll just note it down. I'll put them up. Okay. So there are different emitter sizes which will be there. I'll just put up those things. You can pick whichever one you want.
okay, sir. Sir, also like, can we come like if we take MOSFET of 180 nanometer, then can we take BJT of 65 nanometer, sir?
For the purpose of this project, it is okay.
Okay, sir.
I mean, I don't think the BJT models will change so much. It's okay. All right. So thanks everyone. It was nice teaching you all this semester. I hope you guys could learn quite a bit in this particular course. So any feedback that you would like to give?
Course is really helpful, sir.
Okay, that's nice to know. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed the learning experience. So what we will do is after the your end semester exam is on the 10th, we'll follow the same mode. It will be an objective test. And what we will do is, your exams are getting over on 20th December, right? So maybe 21st, we will have the Viva for your project, 21st or 22nd. I will confirm the date. So by the time, just wind up your project. Okay.
So exam will get over on 22nd, sir.
22nd, is it? Okay. Yeah. So maybe then those who are not having exams on 21st, 22nd, I can conduct 2 sessions of Vivas. So one on 23rd and maybe one on 21st or 22nd. We'll decide the dates later. Okay. But as I suggested, please do your design even before your end semester exam, because that is one of the major ways in which you learn the subject. And because I mean, we were running out of time and so on, we couldn't conduct the reviews and so on. But otherwise, I would have loved to have the evaluation completed before the end of the semester. But whatever it is, make sure that you do the project before the semester is, I mean, before you have your semester exam, so that while you do the simulations, you will learn the concepts very well, and that will be very helpful for you when you are trying to answer the questions. Okay. So thanks everyone, and all the best for your end semester exam as well as for your project. And I love teaching you all, guys. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
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 Thank you, sir.